and obviously some of the linguistic elements that we use sometimes to convey meanings, in English. So when we say, the word linguistic, any idea in terms of what does the word linguistic mean? Anyone, any ideas? So linguistic is essentially another word to use in place of when we use language. So for example, if I say I speak Spanish or if I say I speak French, obviously my language or the use of language is essentially, also described as what is called language use or relating to language, and that would be termed as what is called linguistic. So this is an important topic that we're going to be discussing today, simply because when we do look at studying English or any language for that sake, we would need to understand, what are the textual features which actually make up the language or give us it is like the tools that you get essentially to be able to comfortably speak, listen, respond, and communicate in that particular language. So the topic is essentially related to the topic list which has been provided by NCFE, and we'll go through this presentation. Although I've changed some part of it simply to make it a bit more interactive and a bit more detailed, and I will also upload this updated version onto the Moodle. So the main bit that we want to look at today in this session is to understand the relation between these textual features and how they can be used to shape the meaning of what we are saying to people, or in this context, different audiences. Like, give you a practical example. When I speak to my children, I speak in a different tone, I speak in a different style, and maybe my conversation with them is in a very different, manner. Now, because they see me as authority, I am to a certain extent a person with experience, and I am going to give them guidance. My language and my way of speaking to them uses certain types of structural English features, language features, grammatical features, and they are all a part and parcel of what are called, linguistic or textual features. Because when I articulate and I say something, I'm using my hand gestures. I might be, using facial expressions, my body language, and to a certain extent, the way I frame up sentences and use the choice of words is all going to help me communicate with them as an authority or as a peer. So, for example, when the kids are young, you can be authoritative, but when they become teenagers, they have a life of their own, they have a mind of their own, and you have to deal and work with them as friends rather than as somebody who's showing authority and bossing them around, and they won't never listen. Similarly, when you talk to some of your colleagues, when you're in your place of work, or when you speak to your boss or your manager, your tone, the way you speak, the choice of words that you use, how do you articulate yourself is slightly different from how you would speak to your friends and peers, because you may be at the same level, have the same role and responsibility. And that is where you would need to learn how to use these varying gestures and features to be able to communicate with them in a different tone. So sometimes when you do speak to them, what is literally coming out of it is that when I speak to my peers or my colleagues and somebody that I'm friends with, I sit on a daily basis next to, my tone and my way of speaking and the way I address them and the way I respect them would be more friendly, simply because I know I have to get along with them on a day-to-day basis. But when you go across to a meeting or a conference, or you're meeting management or meeting somebody senior enough, your way of dress up, for example, your body language, the way you speak, whether you're speaking formal, using formal language, or informal language, whether your language is persuasive, or descriptive. In some cases, do you use direct speech or do you use indirect speech? Those are the type of differences that you would use and create, and that is what is all covered in what is called textual features. Now, if I'm writing, if I'm speaking, and if I'm, say, for example, communicating, there are three different ways. So when I write, I will also include things like visuals and graphics, sometimes because it's easier to make the other person understand what you're trying to say. So example, if I'm now doing a session with you, I am using, because we are doing this through distance learning and we are doing it online, my aim would be if I keep talking to you without showing you something, it might not mean a lot of things. It might just feel that it is quite abstract, although I understand what you're saying, but I don't see anything. So it's very difficult for me to comprehend visually and understand what is being talked about. So that is why I am using and taking the help of a PowerPoint slide, which helps me put the content, the matter, and obviously what I'm discussing across using these visual and graphical features. So textual features in general, when we talk about, will be a combination of a lot of things. So if I were to put something across here and mention, so one of the things that I would like to mention is when I talk about, say, if I write this here, so when I talk about textual features, in English, what are they? What are the textual features, if I put it this way? What is it that we classify as textual features? So here, textual features, if I have to define, they are going to be structural and linguistic elements that help, let me just expand this, that help in conveying the meaning or in different types of text. So one of the things that I would also be looking at is that when I do talk about these features, what all they include. So we will discuss in a bit more detail what these features are. Now, why are they required? So the next question that I would have in mind is, why are they required? So that could be the second question that I have in mind, that why do I need to use textual features and why are they required? So one is, what is textual features? And the second part is, why are they required? Why can't I just communicate or speak to somebody without using them? So they are required. So I would put it this way: these are required these are required to, say, to convey, depending on the purpose, audience, and format of what you are, what text, say, for example, you are going to say or use or write. Because in English, obviously, I can say something which I'm doing verbally right now, but there could be something that I send in writing, and that would be in written context. And sometimes if I'm having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, then I would also be using some of these features that I will discuss, but not all. Maybe I will not maybe use structural features or language features or visual and graphical features when I'm talking to somebody, but I might be using grammatical features and sentence construction ways in which I want to communicate myself and be very clear in terms of what I'm actually talking about. So when we do talk about textual features, you need to be very clear. Something needs to click in your mind, which basically tells you that, okay, these are features which are going to help me convey what I'm talking, what I'm speaking, what I'm writing in a very meaningful way. So they will help you in conveying what you have in your mind or your thoughts or the thought process that you have, so that the others are able to understand you more clearly. Now, there are four different types of textual features that we talk about. Now, if you imagine that you're writing something, then these would be called what are called structural features. Because when you write, as you can see, I've just written a couple of sentences in front of you. What I've done is, what textual features I've used in this particular writing of sentence. One, I have actually created a bold, by formatting the text, I have actually boldened the text to make it appear more clearly or more, prominently. The second thing that I've done is I've used some parts of it in terms of, phrasing in such a way that it reads well. Very basically, I've used the context of a small paragraph or using a sentence. Now, sometimes I might also use things like a bullet point. If I've got a number of points to make, which I will show you as an example. Now, in this case, I've used bullet points, as you can see. Now, this is again because I am using structural features which can be used when you're writing in a way wherein it is going to create a record, but also you are sending or sharing your thought process or your, let's say what you have in mind when you're conveying, but you're using some of these features to better present your thoughts and your communication. So I might be using bullet points. In some cases I'm using features like open brackets and closing of brackets. I'm using parentheses and inverted commas, and these are all going to be features. Now if I were to use, for example, if I put it this way, when I talk about a structural feature, you can see that I've created a table here, right, which is consisting of rows and columns. Now, this is also a structural feature, because what I want to do is I want you to understand the information in a very clear, and I want to make sure that you understand this in a very. What I want to do is I want to give you a lot of information, but I want to articulate it in such a way that it is absolutely going to be clear and easily recognizable. And that is why I've used a table. I could have used a paragraph, I could have used a bullet point, I could have actually written sentences about it, but the way I have written it using a table makes it apparently very clear, easily understandable, and organizes what I'm trying to say, and it's presented also in a very good fashion or a manner which is easy to understand. So these things which are going to help you articulate, write your thoughts in an organized manner, it will help in presenting the text that you're saying or going to provide in a good, efficient manner, which makes it pleasing, obviously easy to understand and easy to grasp for the readers. That these are all the things which are going to be covered as textual features. But within textual features, going into detail, they would be something called structural features, because you're structuring the document. You're putting an in page number in the document, you're putting a heading, you're using a subheading, you're using formatting like bold, italics, or underline. You're actually using things like tables, and in some cases you're also including, if it's a story that you're writing, if it's a letter that you're writing, if it's an article that you're writing, then you also break it down into three different parts. You have a start, you have a middle, and then you have an end. So in some cases I will call it introduction and conclusion. And to emphasize on certain points which are important in that conversation or important in that information, you would maybe use bullet points or numbered list, because it is going to pop out and essentially allow the readers to understand that this part of the information given using bullet points or numbered list is quite important, and that is why they've been highlighted using bullet points or numbered list, to ensure that you are able to get these get them to understand, and the writer is actually wanting you to get it across to its readers to make it easy for them to understand. Is that okay? Any questions on this first part, which is what is textual features? And then within textual features, we are covering the first part, which consists and makes it a textual feature, which are what are called structural parts or structural features of the document. Is that clear? Any questions on this? Okay, let's go to the second part of structural features. Now, obviously, when we write, when we speak, when we talk, there are going to be differences in terms of how we talk, what words we use, how do we phrase those words, and obviously, how do we use them. I would say, when I say them, I mean use those words to actually create sentences. Now, sometimes you think and you see and you read a letter. Say, for example, you received your electricity bill, right? And or a letter from your electricity provider, say Eon, and that letter has come in, and that letter says your prices are going to rise from 1st of April. Now, that is more of an official communication which the electric company is doing to you, in order to inform you that they are going to be raising prices of electricity from the 1st of April. That will have a very formal way of presenting information across. And that, when I look at formal way, it will have to the point information. It will say it is rising by how much, what is the date on which these price rises or hikes are coming into play. It will also have things like what you can do if you cannot afford. And then towards the end, the letter would also maybe have a communication which will essentially, tell you exactly that if you are looking for better deals, or if you are not in sync with, obviously the raises which are, or the hike which is going to happen, and you need help or advice, then there will be a box or a column that will clearly highlight that, maybe in a different color, and that would be using the structural feature along with the language features to communicate this news to you. So that would be an example of how, you would see language features coming across. Now, if I'm writing an email, or receiving an email, which is a marketing email or a sales email or a promotional email, say for example from Burger King or from Papa John's Pizza, or Pizza Hut, because it's the weekend, and you know that a lot of these marketing emails come in because of the fact that they give you offers on the weekend. There, the point of communication on these emails and the language which is going to be used is going to be a little informal language, because it'll talk about fantastic offers over the weekend, 50% off on all pizzas. So it is going to be conversational language, which is going to be informal, which is going to strike a chord with you to say, okay, it is going to be slightly persuasive, because they need to be able to give you instances of why you need to look at, maybe ordering this pizza over the weekend, or maybe take up their offer. And that is where the use of persuasive text is used. And the use of persuasive text could be things like discounts being offered, free delivery being given, or in some cases, you buy one, get one free. And these are examples of what are called language features, of how you're going to differentiate by using maybe semi-formal or informal language, but using persuasive and conversational language to get your customers to order pizza with you, or order delivery of pizza with you. Now, sometimes you read an article in the newspaper, and that article might be, in general, if you look at the BBC News on your phone, and you might find that when you go down further in the news section, you'll have an editorial part. And in that editorial part of the section, what you're going to essentially see is that there is some sort of a discussion or a debate happening on, the current, situation with, say, for example, the Ukraine war. Now, in this case, what will happen in that article is that the journalist or the editor would be using some imagery. The imagery would be relevant to the discussion that he or she is trying to initiate with the audience. And in such cases, there would be open-ended questions which are going to be used. There are going to be, use of different types of, I would say, words. These words could be adjectives, adverbs, or words which are going to create or evoke emotions. And in such cases, you would see that this type of language which is being used by the editor, say, for example, do you support this war? So there could be a question towards the end. It might also say that so many soldiers, and there will be use of some statistics which will say so many people have been displaced because of this particular war. 7 million Ukrainians have been displaced. Now, this usage of facts, statistics, and imagery is going to be engaging, or trying to engage the readers thought process, when the editor or the journalist is actually writing that particular article. Now, in such cases, this would be seen as, a language feature, because the choice of words, the phrases, the way the sentences are being used, and the imagery which is being used to create and convey the meaning of what is being provided as text would be termed and would become a part and parcel of the language feature. Now, in some cases, when the journalist would ask you a question, or would address the question to you directly, would you donate £2 a day to help the homeless who have been displaced by the war in Ukraine? There would be a direct speech or a direct question to the readers or the audience to say, and the idea there is to engage with you to action, or kind of initiate an action from you after reading this particular article, and that would be evoking a response. And in such cases, what you will generally see, there would be direct speeches, or quotes given from President Trump or President Zelensky and things like that, and they would be looking at usages of what is called direct speech. And direct speech would apply to you, as if when you read the article, you would feel that the person is actually speaking to me directly, or they're addressing me directly. And in such cases, there would be usages of active and passive voice. So these are all language features. When you read an article, when you read a newsletter, when you read a newspaper article, when you get a letter at the home, or for example, you have an email, you'd be able to find out how this has been written, whether the language used is formal or informal, whether the language is persuasive or conversational or descriptive, or in some cases, when you have the use of metaphors, simile, and other types, for example, hyperbole or exaggeration, you'd be able to spot in terms of these sentences that the person is trying to create comparisons or give us examples which are similar in order to kind of reiterate and reinforce the information the person is trying to provide. And these kind of features that you would get to see when they are used in communication of written oblique spoken English, generally written English, you would find that language features become essential because they will help you articulate and convey the meaning of the text or the conversation or what you're trying to say in a much more effective and responsive manner. So these will be termed as what are called language features. Any questions on this? Is everybody able to understand? Okay. The third part is visual oblique graphical features. Now, they are a part of the textual features because here, sometimes when you have to structure the document or sometimes you have to convey important information, what you're going to see is that you would need not just words, but you would need images, graphs, pictures, diagrams, and a special type of formatting that you can do, or even videos in certain cases, to be able to convey the information and to make it convincing and interesting and engaging with your readers and or your audiences. So in such cases, what you're going to use is also a part and parcel of textual features, which will be called visual and graphical features. Now, these features help you convey the meaning of the text that you're saying in a supportive manner because they will help you articulate your thoughts by showing examples in the form of graphs, images, diagrams, tables, or some sort of special formatting. Give you an example. Now, when you read a journalistic article, normally what will happen is the article is divided normally into 3 or 4 parts. So they start off with a bit of introduction, they build up to the topic, they will have a bit of debate or thought process of what both the sides of the discussions are, and then towards the end, the editor will try and end or come to a conclusion. But what you are going to see in the 4 paragraphs that have been put forward, you would generally see 4 different types of images associated with it. There might be use of what are called visual oblique graphical features. So there might be an image, there might be a table, there might be some statistics quoted, there might be, for example, some sort of special formatting done. And when I say special formatting done, special formatting could be if I look at inserting a big quotation mark here, or for example, a text box here, and that text box could be in a different color. And that would be, a type of special formatting. So, for example, this is an idea of special formatting that you would see. If I sometimes, when you look at for example, insertion of big quotations, like this, big inverted commas. Now, these are examples of what are called special formatting. Now, in some cases, you might even have a table which has been used, and the table that has been used has been formatted in a very specific way. For example, the color of the table, or for example, the length of the columns, and the information within that could be written in bold, or in some cases, written in italics, and that is to draw attention. In some cases, what might also happen is that they might give you some information, and that information may have a picture in it. It might have a picture in it to break the text down, to give or convey some part of the information, and that would be a specific type of formatting. But generally, inclusion of things like pictures, tables, graphs would be done in the document that you are writing or sending in order to, help you support and convey the meaning of the text in a supportive and in a convincing manner. So, what are going to be visual and graphical features? Images and illustration which support understanding of text. So, an example of this which comes in your exam is there might be a picture given. Under the picture, you might have what is called a caption. For example, if I put this picture on, but the picture doesn't make any sense to me. What is this picture? Why is this picture put here? And in what context is the picture actually, related to the document? So what I would do then in that case is I'm going to essentially put a caption underneath it, and a caption would mean that would be something which will actually describe, the picture. What does the picture stand for? And a caption is a way to basically describe. So this is, say, for example, a picture of the graduation, 2024 graduation, essentially, of UK Versity. So this picture, if I put into a particular article, or, and then put a caption underneath, it will make more sense for the audience and readers to understand that, okay, this is a picture about a graduation, and maybe the topic of discussion is graduation or something like that. So when you look at using some structural formatting like bold, italics, underline, use of imagery like graphs, charts, tables, colored boxes, or formatting within a table. Now, if you look at very carefully, even within this table, you would see there is a formatting which has been done. So main headings have been boldened, as you can see. There is a table, there is a difference
Excuse
in
me,
the
please.
table also with regard to the color of the table. So if you see, the headings are lightly, there's a bit of a formatting done, which is to shade the table in light gray. And obviously the table has rows and columns to be able to present this information. So in general, when you look at, sending or sharing information across in terms of documents, in order to make it more understanding, more appealing to your readers and audience, you would include what are called visual and graphical features. Is that okay? Any questions on this? Right. The last type of features that we all.
Hello,
Yes, go
hello.
ahead, Faustina, tell me.
Yeah, I would like to know what you are teaching us. Is it as presented on PC or as in a book?
So today's topic is there on Moodle. And when you log
Yeah,
into
I
Moodle,
know,
I will show
I
you that
do,
it is
but
available there.
I'm seeing it more as a feature on a computer than in a book.
No, I didn't
Or they are
understand your question.
related. Yeah, it's not a question per se, but it's like something is bothering in my mind. Like what we are learning, it's more of something on a computer than a feature on a computer or a feature in a book.
No, you are
Oh,
you are
okay.
you are misplaced, because these are things that you are going to do in your reading exam, and obviously your exam is on a PC, it is not on a paper. So
Oh,
how would
okay.
you see these? How would you see these being enacted out in the paper? Is maybe a question that you're asking, but I will explain, maybe using a Word document. So when you see your exam that you do with us at the college, what will happen is you'll have some sort of an editor which will appear in a screen like a blank document that you are seeing right now. This particular
Okay.
editor will also have some bits of this formatting elements on the top, but a restricted
Okay.
number. They'll have things like you could bold it, italic it, underline it, make the font big or small. You could be able to
Okay.
left align the text, right align the text, but there would be a topic which will be given in the comprehension, which you are going to read. And then with that topic that you read in the comprehension, you are going to be asked questions around that particular topic, that what are the textual features in this particular document. you
Oh,
know so
okay.
there would be
Understood.
direct questions on some of these aspects. So when you look at, a comprehension example that you would get, in terms of your test, it could essentially have lots of things being talked about, conveyed in that document. So what you are expected to do is that you are going to be reading that, the bits which have been given. For example, if I drag something now to the, screen, what would be there would be, say, for example, a comprehension like this, or a text or a document like this. That document essentially is going to have some information on it. That information will be presented in paragraphs or bullet points or numbered list, or it'll have some headings, some subheadings, it'll have maybe some pictures in it. And that would then ask, once you read that document, what it'll ask you on the right hand side of the document would be, what there will be some questions which will be presented, and those questions will need to be answered, with respect to this particular document. Now, you would only be able to answer those questions if you understand for some reason that how this document has been written, what are the features of what is the information being conveyed in the document. You would also be looking at understanding that what information this document has, how this has been conveyed, what is the tone of writing, what is the style of writing, what kind of things have been included in the document, and they would then be asked as questions. So one of the direct questions which comes with relation to this particular topic that we are discussing today, textual features, would be: could you identify the style of writing of the document? Could you identify two textual features which have been included in this document? There could be bits that you would be asked to inference. That means interpret after reading the document, that what kind of can you provide one sentence wherein a simile has been used? Can you
Okay.
provide an example of one sentence wherein a metaphor has been used by the author? Or
Oh,
it might
okay.
say, could you identify three textual features of this document? Now, if you were to do this, for example, if I look at this particular document in front of you, which is the pink picture, it has some three textual features which have been used in the document. What are these textual features? There's a use of imagery, right, which is visuals and graphic. Then there is use of headings, and within headings, as you can see, there is a heading which is being used. There's a bit of a different color given, and the use of different types of colors to write the text. For example, and the reason why this has been done as a textual feature is that it is done to help readers in its audience identify that this bit of information here, there are three ducks in the pond, may be more important for you to grasp in terms of information. So, as you can see, this is what you would be required to do by understanding how the document has been written, what kind of features or use of structural features the document has to convey information, and you would be asked to identify some of these by looking at the text, the graphics, the visuals, the structure, and also the way the language has been written. And it would say, could you identify what tone and style of writing or the language is used in the document? So you would need to be able to identify them, and to identify them, you need to understand what are textual features. Does that make sense now?
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Good stuff. So now when we look at, the last part of textual features is basically the use of grammar. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that when we do write, and speak, we typically use the language and or maybe alter the way we speak and make use of sentences and communicate in phrases or short sentences and the choice of words. That is all going to be related to what is called the grammatical feature of the communication. Now, these are used primarily for sentence construction and to also communicate, questions. Say, for example, sometimes commands, exclamations, or even statements. Now, if I say something right now that today it is a sunny day, you know, it's a sunny day outside today for a change in winters. Or if I say as we approach spring, the weather is changing. Now, what you need to be able to, or if I say something, or if I write something which will be saying, the government isn't making the right decisions with regards to taxes. Now, these are all things which I'm expressing as a writer or as a person, but I'm doing it in a context of, I'm saying in saying a sentence in a particular context. Now, when I criticize the government, for example, I say the government is not making the right decisions in terms of taxes. Now, there are two things how I can infer this sentence. One, I do not agree with the government, the way the government is actually introducing and raising taxes for the common people. The other is, if I become a bit more, if I say the same information, that I don't agree with the way the government is raising taxes because this is also increasing inflation and it is making the prices rise. I don't agree with this. Now, this is my statement wherein I'm not only just disagreeing with what the government is doing, but I'm also criticizing the government by using the choice of words, saying I don't agree with the government decisions. I just don't think the Chancellor has the experience. She's never held a public office before, and she's become the Chancellor of the country. The only job that she'd had was working with Barclays, and she was thrown out of that job also by her supervisors in while the time she worked in Barclays, and that's a fact. So when I do say these sentences, I am actually saying it with some background, because I'm also saying that this is something which has now come out in the open, that she used to work for Barclays and that she was thrown out of her job because of some misappropriation of funds or wrong decision making, which is actually a fact. So in such cases, the way I put it across, the way I articulate it, I'm saying a sentence, I'm saying it with authority, I'm making a statement. I am, if I also say that I am literally, I am very livid in terms of what the Labour government is actually doing, because they promised before the elections that they are not going to raise council tax, but the councils have risen tax in my area by 5.6%. So this is an absolute, opposite of what they promised, and they are breaking their promises. Now, I can't believe why they are raising taxes. So this could be something which is a sentence I make wherein I'm, let's say, showing disbelief that they have blatantly lied. I have a video of Keir Starmer, which is doing TikTok, and in one of the press conferences, he's very clearly saying we are not going to raise taxes, councils are not going to raise taxes. And what has happened? Exactly opposite. Councils all over England and Wales have raised taxes. So, this is just sheer disbelief that I say that such a blatant lie that the Prime Minister has said. And this is, I'm expressing my thoughts in a way that this is a disbelief. I can't believe. And what I do is I would say, I just can't believe what this government is doing. And then I pause. That pause would be supported by an exclamation. So what these kind of things, when I look at statements, when I make a statement, like it's going to be sunny outside, or it's a good day outside today to go out and walk the pets, this is a statement, because I'm expressing my own personal opinion, and this is what I'm trying to say and convey to some of my audiences and my readers. I might ask a question: is it going to rain tomorrow? Are you okay? Are you feeling well? Now, I am asking you a question. So this is another way of, asking out, or basically saying something, but in this case, you're trying to ask a question. Sometimes you give a command. Can you close the door when you leave? Can you make sure that you do your bed before you go out for cycling? Now, this is a command that I'm asking my son to follow, because it feels like a command, because I'm asking him or giving him direct instructions to say, can you do this before you go or before you leave? And that is where it forms a command. So as you would see, the way we write using sentences types, which could be declarative, interrogative, imperative, or exclamatory, you would have certain meanings of the text being conveyed to your readers or audiences. So when we use features like sentence structure and construction and punctuation and the use of grammar like question marks, full stop, inverted quotes, or question, exclamation marks, or for example, sometimes we also end up using now things like brackets, or different types of brackets, for example, or in some cases, you would, when you're writing an email, or when you're, for example, writing a letter, you would use certain parts of the text to be bold or highlighted or underlined, or use what are called sometimes, like if you use a hyphen, for example, when you're writing a sentence, and you say, okay, something like, I am going to provide the following information below as evidence, and then you put a hyphen, or sometimes you use the colon to say that, I have a few important points to make, which are as below, and then you put a colon. Now, these are things which are going to be used as grammatical features to convey the meaning of the text or paragraph or sentences that you're writing to your audiences or your readers. And when you do so, you're going to be using grammatical features. Now, the use of grammatical features when I'm speaking to you might have to also get into play or bring into play things like body language and your gestures. If I am speaking to you and I'm making a sentence or or asking a question, I might raise my eyebrow, or you might see some wrinkles on my forehead, or you might see my eyes open wide. They would also then help you substitute what you're trying to convey. But in those cases, it is using your body language to help convey the meaning of what you're trying to speak. Now, in some cases, you cannot bring them on paper, but when you have conversations or vocal or verbal conversations, then in such cases, moving your hand, moving your body, or making facial gestures would also help you complement what you're trying to say in terms of your sentence, or the way you are trying to say words or sentences in a discussion. Is that okay? Any questions on this? So, if I were to summarize, and we look at how do we look at recognizing these textual features when you are going to take an exam, and there are going to be two or three direct questions related to this topic of textual features, which is where it is going to ask you to recognize what kind of document is this, or what kind of textual features are used in this document, why does the writer or the author actually uses the features like headings or subheadings or bullet points. You'd be asked to interpret that, and each of these questions would carry 1 or 2 marks in the test. So, recognizing how the document is written, what text or information it is conveying, how it is provided to you in terms of the construction, the language, and is there any use of things like imagery, graphs, tables, or I would say pictures in the document, and are there any supporting elements which kind of provide additional information, would all be helping you to recognize why and how the document has essentially been written. So things like, in the comprehension that you get, there are obviously in the reading test 4 parts to the test. The one part of that test would definitely be a newspaper article, and it will ask you to identify 1 or 2 textual features from it. There would be one part of the test in terms of comprehension which will be a letter, and there'll be one part of the test within the comprehension which is essentially going to be either an email or a website, and it'll ask you to compare what are the textual features being used by, say, John and David. And you would need to answer that by reading, by looking at the document, and then identifying those, and they would be questions which will all carry 1 or 2 marks. When you are asked to identify, most of these questions will be 1 mark, because you're just looking at it, reading at it, understanding it, and then writing it in short sentence of 4 or 5 words to identify that feature. But when you're asked to pick out one sentence or one example of what the author is saying using this feature, then in those cases, those questions would carry 1 or 2 marks, depending on how much you've been asked to write. So in such cases, this topic is directly related to at least, I would say, 3 to 4 marks out of the 40 in your reading test in particular. And how do we recognize textual features? In the end, we recognize them by looking at what type of text is being written. Is it being conveyed using an article, using a website, using a letter, or an email? And obviously, within that, you would break them down quite quickly into structural features, language features. You look at visual and graphical features, you look at grammatical features, and they would help you understand that particular text which is being communicated, in order for you to understand that well. So this is an important part, because by understanding and recognizing the textual features, we can analyze and interpret different type of text more effectively, because that is the whole idea of what the questions related to this topic would be on your exam. Now, just to briefly, before we close the session, just to briefly show you what all is available on the Moodle part, section on the Moodle for this particular topic. Let me show the Moodle to you. So if you log into Moodle and go on to the reading part of the course, and here if the sections are open, just click on collapse all. what will happen is you would essentially see all the topics that we are covering. So today we have covered what is called textual features. So when you click on this left arrow, it'll open this topic up, and this is the presentation that I've used, but I am going to provide an updated version of the presentation. So that would mean that you are going to look into or probably read into what I've got today, what I've shown, and obviously what I've got today from a point of view of our discussion points. So let me just quickly do that update while I show you the other things. So here we go. So here, this presentation, what I'm going to do is primarily take it away, simply because this one is, I would say, slightly older. And there are one or two activities that I have uploaded that I would want you to go through, simply because they will help you understand the topic of discussion that we've done by actually doing these activities. So let me show you an example of this particular activity. Just give me 1 second. So here is where I will upload this presentation. And let me show you the activity. So this presentation here that I've uploaded, when you click on it, you should be able to see the slides, the updated slides that I put in now. And then if you want to read a bit further, what we've covered is actually mentioned here with the use of some examples and captions that I've explained. And then what I want to do is actually show you the activity that is uploaded here. So let me open the Word document. So these are activities which are given here. One is this activity question that you see, and this is the other part. Okay. So let me just break this up and hide this because that's old. So these are the activities. This is going to be a PDF document which you can open when I click on this. And what you'll see is it is giving you a bit of a example of very close to how you would see a document appearing when you do the test. So this is how maybe a document or a comprehension will appear. And it says the purpose of this text activity is read the text about a footballer called Jeannie Ellis. Then it says what type of text this is, what is are the main points of text, and who is the audience. Now, what you are required to do is obviously use this, read this, and obviously at some stage you are required to then fill this up in terms of answers here, suppositive answers. Now, what I've also done is, for example, if I read this particular text very clearly, I would, if I look at the visual or the imagery, let's do this right now as a small example, and you can unmute your mics and participate. For example, if I look at this particular article here, which has come up, I have an image of a girl standing with football. There is some sort of a heading to the article which, or the text which says Genie aims to surprise at the World Cup. And obviously there are bits and pieces written about Jeannie. So at 16, there is bits and pieces written about her. It talks about Phil Neville, which is her, which is obviously an example that the writer is comparing, that he was at the age of 19 the youngest member in the squad in the World Cup. So she's trying to do the same, probably from a point of view of a female. She's only 16 years old. And I'm just briefly skimming through the document. And obviously, she has, her objectives set on competing for England at the World Cup. Now, what would this article tell me if I read this article? There are a couple of things that I can, arrive at, or my deduction would be that when I look at this article, this is a sports article, because it's talking about football as a sport. There are lots of various clues which are given, things like the World Cup, playing for England, again the use of the word World Cup here, and obviously because it uses the word football, and it is showing a football as a picture as well, and she's dressed up in a football kit. This is genuinely a article on sports. So possibly the way it has been written, because it has use of exclamations, inverted commas. There is text and language which is conversational, which I think because it says everything happened in a short pace of time, it's been hard for me to be able to manage my emotions because it's all just a whirlwind, she says. And then it says sometimes I've got to pinch myself. So use of informal words like I have. I would have written IHAVE, but I've used a conversational way of writing it. Says, and lot of direct speech, things like what's said. I don't think it's real. It's hard for me. So it's direct text which has been used. So this is use of informal language. This is indirect direct speech. This is to a certain extent very clearly an article written by Jeannie or somebody who has spoken to Jeannie and they've expressed their thoughts. So here, the main part that I want to look at is these are the three questions I want to identify. What type of text is it? It is a journalistic article written on sports and possibly an article which has got published in the newspaper or some sort of a local magazine or maybe even a website. I can't conclude, but these could be my interpretation of reading it. Who's the audience for the article? Obviously, people who read sports column or people who are interested in sports essentially. And because it is focused on the World Cup, I would definitely say the audience is people who are interested in football essentially. What is the main idea of the text, or who's the audience in the we have identified the audience, but what is the main idea of the text? Part two of the question. The main idea of the text is to basically inform about that she's wanting to play for the England team. This is the World Cup, and obviously she is preparing to represent England in the World Cup. So this is where what I need to do is look at the article, look at the text which has been provided, and identify certain textual features by looking at the textual features like use of imagery, headline, use of language, the way the sentences have been mentioned and constructed. I can actually deduce lots of things, and those are the three main questions which are going to be coming in some shape or form in the form of the activity. Now, you could have different interpretations. So the text part one is what type of text is it? You need to answer it and do it at your end. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to unhide the answers so that you are able to, once you do this particular activity, you are able to see the answers, whether you've got it right or whether you've not got it right, and where you have not, done or answered it correctly. And then there's a second activity which is also given, and this is again going to help you uh, you know revise what we've discussed today in terms of textual features. And again, there's an article or a text paragraph with some pictures given. But here what I've done is, in this activity there are three or four different types of articles or text given. So this is the second type, this is the third type, and this is the fourth one. Now, here again, most of the questions that you have to do is identify the purpose of the text, audience, and what are the details, why are the details important, and the way they have been given are important. So you have to answer these questions. And what I'm also going to do again for this particular activity is going to unhide the answers part of it, so that once you complete it at your end, you're also able to check whether you've got it right, or where are the areas that you've not got it right, and you can go back into the presentation and do a bit of revision. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So we will stop here today. I will send you a copy of this recording just after the session on the WhatsApp group, so that if you want to look back and go back into what we've discussed today, that can be done. And then for some of you who are actually also in the math session, I will see you in about 15-20 minutes, and we'll do the discussion for a different topic for the maths as well today. Okay. So thanks for joining, and I will see you tomorrow, same time for English, wherein we are going to be doing writing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Bye. Bye for now.